Talking about a new executive order from President Trump that could alter the country's mail-in ballot system. It's also causing some people to question the Trump administration's authority over elections. We're bringing 9 News legal expert Whitney Traylor here to talk more about this issue. So I think we really need to start with what exactly an executive order is. I mean, day one of the president's second term, we saw him signing so many of these.
So many, yeah.
These aren't laws, though. Can you explain what they are?
No, that's a great point. And really, an executive order is a formal written order by the president to direct these federal agencies. So it's basically the president saying, this is how we're going to enforce the laws. This is what I want these various federal agencies to do. So what it isn't is it's not a law. You can't create a law out of thin air with just a signature. It can't override the Constitution or acts of Congress. So it's really just a direction on how the federal government will operate.
Let's talk about this specific mail-in ballot executive order, what it is, and is it really legal?
Well, off the bat, I would say no, I don't think it's legal at all, and it will be challenged, and I think it will lose. I haven't seen any legal experts who would say, yes, this is constitutional. And really what it purports to do is direct these various federal agencies to create voter lists that establish eligibility for voters, and then it directs the United States Postal Service to only send mail-in ballots to those individuals. And so really through the Department of Homeland Security and the Social Security Administration, they're supposed to create these lists, send those to the states, and then the states are supposed to only go forward with that. So this is, I think, a violation of the Constitution because there's the elections clause under Article 1, Section 4. It says states govern the time, place, and manner in terms of how elections will go. This is trying to take that power out of the states and really put it in the federal government, which is completely unconstitutional.
Let's get back to the legality of this specific executive order. There have already been lawsuits challenging it. You talked about the challenges will probably continue, but let's talk about the ones that have already happened. Can you tell us about some of these lawsuits? Yeah,
there's been a number of lawsuits. So the executive order was signed, I think, last Tuesday, and the lawsuit started on Thursday. So over 20 states, including Colorado, the District of Columbia, have filed these lawsuits. It's also been the ACLU, the NAACP, the Delta Sigma Theta sorority, they jumped in there. And so they're challenging it, saying, look, this violates separation of powers. It's an overreach by the president. It directs the post office to do things, and the post office is an independent agency with its own board of governors. So it's basically, this is what they call ultra virus, where the president is exceeding his authority. So those lawsuits were filed on Thursday. I expect there'll be more, but that's where we're at now.
We've already seen some special elections around the country this week. Of course, we have the big midterm elections coming up in November. So what's next as far as this executive order is concerned?
Well, in that you raise a good point, because I mentioned some of the legal issues, but there's practical issues as well, in the sense of, for the post office to make new rules, they have to have a rulemaking period. There has to be a comment period. This is all supposed to happen with 120 days before the elections. So how this would, creating these lists, cross-checking these lists, it's just not practical. So in the lawsuit, they're going to seek an injunction, which is to enjoin to stop this from going forward. So there'll be a hearing, I suspect, fairly soon on that, and there'll be some sort of injunction. I expect that the injunction will prevail and it won't go forward, but that's the biggest issue. But the executive order does direct the Department of Homeland Security and the Social Security Administration to start creating these lists. But it also, I read it this morning, and it also says you have to go try and develop these lists. It gives all this instruction, but not really all these directives without much instruction. So how they would do this in such a short time period is also impractical.
And putting extra work on the post office doesn't seem practical either. Last time I checked, the post office is pretty darn busy.
The post office is on the struggle bus right now. So yeah, they have enough on their plate.
Whitney, thanks for coming in this morning to talk more about this particular subject. We're going to have more 9 News for you coming up right after this.